Hey everyone, what's going on? Today we are talking with Ariana Thacker. She's the CEO and founder of MoldCo. And I'm really excited for this episode because one of the biggest challenges in this whole journey that people go through is the expense. It's the expense on health treatment. It's the expense that insurance doesn't cover a whole bunch of stuff. It's the expense that you have to do things with your house. And a lot of times, and rightfully so, it feels incredibly unfair that in order for someone to have to just be healthy, it's like you got dealt this like crap set of cards and it sucks, right? And um, what Ariana is doing is incredible, and it's something that I'm really excited to talk about. We've been chatting with Ariana behind the scenes for a while on what she's doing and her mission with the company and everything. And so we wanted to get her on here to talk to you guys about it herself. So I'm gonna stop there. Ariana, how you doing?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't you why don't we talk about just high level? What is MoldCo? What's going on and how is it all the exciting things I just mentioned? And then maybe we can get into your story a little bit.
Absolutely. MoldCo is a virtual clinic servicing patients dealing with mold toxicity. So we offer a detox and repair solution guided by the Shoemaker Protocol, which is a protocol based on over 30 years of research. It's been implemented in over 30,000 patients to date. So what we've done was translate that existing protocol into our virtual care platform, and we guide patients through that journey. So it's moving away from guesswork, which you see a lot of that in the current solutions, the functional health communities, et cetera, and then no solutions at all in standard mainstream medicine. So we've templatized that approach and made it available to patients, this really world expert guided approach. And we have treatments and care that's available currently in 5 states. We're expanding nationwide fairly quickly. And then we have specialized lab testing as well, and that's available almost nationwide.
It's amazing. This is this is where all of this has been heading. There's literally I think it might have been episode one of this podcast, like 5, 6 years ago, whenever it was. I talked about this idea. Uh, what did I call it? I called it the new mold truth or something like that. And it was this model that I had thought through. And I looked at the path of cigarettes and when it was understood that cigarettes were a problem and just like kind of the key milestones that happened before anyone even really did anything about it. And like before any like significant anything happened in terms of regulation or anything, like it was 30 plus years since all the research was known. That's how long it took for you to not to be able to like smoke when your kid is being born or be on an air, like anything like that. It was crazy. And I was looking at what was happening in the whole world. I'm like, we are like right at the beginning of this.
Uh,
And we have an opportunity to skip or to fast track the 30-year timeline that has already been proven to us if we rely on government or federal or whatever. It's like somebody else to handle it for us effectively in a way to provide it to like general practitioners where now it's something that it's done, right? Like that is a slow turn. It's like turning the Titanic. And the reason I'm so excited to talk to you is because it made me think all the way back to episode one. Like anyone listening, go think to episode one. I know a lot of them before that. And you'll hear me talking about this. And I feel like Ariana here is doing that and she's speeding it up. And I think it's so freaking awesome. And so I'd love to get into the nuts and bolts a little bit in a minute. But maybe before we do that, why does someone do this? Why did you do this?
Yeah, absolutely. And that cigarette analogy. That's a fascinating perspective to look at this from. I've never heard that before, so that's really interesting to me. Thank you. I It started from a personal health journey. I never made that mold health connection before. I'm in this very large, or initially was in this very large bucket of the population that didn't know that mold could cause this kind of health issue. I originally thought it was tied to asthma, allergies, fungal infections, which it is. It is tied to those things, but it's also tied to this other concept more recently recognized by the NIH, where mold exposure is tied to cognitive issues, immune dysregulation, mood changes, and so much more. And the way that shows up is a whole host of multi-system, multi-symptom issues. So it's not just one acute symptom, right? You have brain fog, you have hair loss, you have low libido, night sweats, poor sleep, frequent urination, gastrointestinal issues. Frequently, we also see skin issues too, rashes, eczema, etc. So it presents as this almost full body attack. This very intelligent microbial species, and it's interesting. It's something recognized in the Bible, but it still feels like a new illness just because of the recognition, education, and awareness that this illness has received.
It's fine. I was on someone else's pod recording for it earlier this week, I think, and they run up the Bible verse specifically that you're mentioning. It's like, if this weird stuff was on the rocks, I'm paraphrasing, this weird stuff was on the rocks where you lived, the first thing was to like get out of the place as fast as you can. And then if you came back and it was still there, then they had this whole thing about like you have to scrape away the bad or whatever. It's so great, but it's just like the fact that you reference it is funny.
Yeah.
Um, I gotta tell you, like hearing you just describe all that, I feel like I heard myself talking for the last like however long
How
with all the things.
And there's so many layers you can look at it from. Like you're very aware of the environmental layer, right? The peeling, the cracking, the discoloration, the smells, right? It's very visceral, and it just ignites those senses. But within the body, there's a lot of signs and clues. Beyond the symptoms, there's also biomarkers that present that are consistently dysregulated with the biotoxin illness pathway is what it's more formally called, but it shows up as elevated TGF beta 1, elevated MMP9, lowered MSH levels, elevated C4A. So there's a unique fingerprint for how this presents in terms of the blood biomarker data. And there's even now more cutting edge research on the transcriptomics level, what's happening in terms of genes getting upregulated or downregulated too. And that also shows up in a unique fingerprint. So you can go layers deeper, right? But I think it starts with where you start, and that's the environmental and what's going on in your environment.
Yeah, I appreciate the dive into that because there's a lot. And what's funny is that like from a very high level, it's like, oh, this is super hard to diagnose. You can't figure this out. And I actually don't think that that's super true. I just think that people don't know what they're looking for, right? It's really hard to figure something out if you don't know what you're looking for. But if equate this to what we do, most inspectors can't find problems at homes. We find a million of them. It's because we know what to look for. And so on your side of the fence, it's like, if you know what you're looking for, you can create the picture, right? You can kind of see these things. And that alone, I think, is a very impactful statement to just kind of like hammer home here is that, is there a formal like mold diagnosis in the computer system that's going to trigger insurance claim that will then allow you to have medicine and all that stuff? No, that doesn't really exist. But if you like dig into what's actually happening in your body, like your body's telling the story, and you just have to have someone who can read the right language. And I think it's really cool, that you guys are incorporating all of that.
Correct. I don't think it's an information gap, it's an education gap. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. So, my story, very short, big leak in a room I was in. I started having symptoms over the course of a couple months. Mine was like some cognitive issues and skin breakouts, like eczema on my face. Those were my two things. I just happened to be dating the girl who would be my wife, who ended up being the daughter of literally the person who knew more about this than anyone in the world, and he helped me figure it out. Became my mentor, now my father-in-law, and there began the inspection, right? And so that was kind of like my in. What was your driver that kind of got you doing this? Because nobody does this. They wake up in the morning and they're like, hey, I want to be in the mold. I guess I'm thinking,
Yeah. It wasn't a childhood dream of being the face of mold. It was a weird evolution. I mean, I got sick, and it was such a shocking thing for me. I've never had a history of health issues. I wasn't on any medication. I've always considered myself very healthy. I would say even athletic. I wouldn't say I was an athlete, but I was able to do HIIT training and running stairs as a warm up, right? I just felt like I embodied health. And to have this happen, it just felt like a night and day shift in my life. And it just got me immensely curious. I became obsessive with the subject, reading hundreds of publications, getting in touch with the world experts, interviewing them, not feeling satisfied with a lot of the surface level answers and just going deeper and deeper. And Beyond that, I just having gone through it myself, I recognized how much suffering that is. And I also started putting myself in other people's shoes. Like, what if I had kids and a family impacted by this? What if I also had to cover immense remediation costs that I couldn't afford? What if I was in the environment for several years, right? And I started to then understand how big that problem was for so many other people just by meeting others, by sharing my story, discussing it with friends, getting in touch with them too. And just the beyond the intellectual cognitive side of this, which is really rewarding for me, it's this empathy for humanity, and just pivoted my life to service and do this.
Love that. You're going to have an incredibly large impact on the world. Not that you don't already know it, but
Thank you.
just to give you a little extra positivity.
Thanks.
Let's I'd like to talk about like how this works a little more, because I actually feel like that'd be really helpful for people just to understand, like, here's MoldCo. We have testing available in 46 states. We have care available in 5 that's going to expand as you continue to grow. How does that look for someone? And you mentioned it, it being an affordable solution to this, which is very good. So like how does that happen? How are you able to get all the labs and do all the treatment, which we all know, functional medicine is not cheap. So how are you able to kind of bundle that and transition that into a way that turns into an affordable process for someone?
Yeah, it's there's a lot going into how the sausage is getting made, but at a high level, so we offer the specialized lab testing. We have one lab panel that has 3 different biomarkers. We consider those that higher signal biomarkers. Also, more bang for your buck. That's a $99 lab panel, and that's offered at cost to us, to the patient. So we don't make a profit off of that lab test. It's to increase education and awareness and for people to get answers right away. That's a lab test done through LabCorp. We also have another LabCorp test too that has 16 biomarkers, a lot more robust. We're launching an HLA haplotype test because there is a genetic susceptibility to this illness. Estimates show around 24% based on the data set we have, and then comparing that to what does that look like for the U.S. population, it ends up being around 24% of the U.S. population, and that's a cheek swab. We also have a lab draw option as well. So that's on the lab testing side. And then on the care side, we didn't want to deviate too far away from what people are used to in a telehealth format. So it starts with an intake questionnaire. It's quite detailed and get a lot on your environmental history, on your past medical history, on your symptoms, etc. And then we make an assessment of whether you're eligible for care or not. So there's inclusion and exclusion criteria in that intake questionnaire. You meet with a specialized trained provider on our staff. Everyone's trained directly by Dr. Scott McMahon and Dr. Shoemaker, and trained also beyond that. We do additional training too. So those are the providers that then see the patient, and from there it's a 3-step protocol. And again, leaning more into data and not guesswork. So what has the literature shown? What has our unpublished studies shown? What has our biobank data shown? What have the leading providers, the experts in the field, what have they seen in clinical practice, and integrating all those insights and continuous learning too as we grow and scale. And those 3 steps are starting with the colesevelam prescription binder that's prescribed off-label. It's an FDA-approved medication, and it's the standard of care in mold toxicity. As we understand it today, it's a rapidly evolving field. The second step is an EDTA-based nasal spray that helps disrupt the biofilms and addresses, or the field believes it addresses problematic Marcon species in the nasal passages, which tends to develop once you're in the environment. And the last step is our patented, for this use case, VIP nasal peptide spray. So that's the detox and repair solution in a nutshell. We got that pricing down to all in roughly $150 to $300 per month, and that includes the provider time, the medication shipped to your door, the ongoing concierge care, so ongoing portal access to your care team, as well as the lab. So the different lab options from the LabCorp lab draw to the cheek swab test for the genetic susceptibility.
Super interesting. Okay. So about 300 a month, that covers your, essentially from what I'm hearing, your kind of monthly treatment stack effectively.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
and then there's consulting components with your practitioner team that's rolled into that. How does that work? Because like
Yeah.
obviously everyone's unique, right? So like where's the balance between kind of standardized treatment versus the connection to people and things like that?
Yeah. At the moment, we have a virtual intake process. So that's done via a visit like this. It's done via Zoom call. We do calls as needed. They're typically not necessary for a lot of these patients. Our check in surveys are quite robust. We have far more touch points than what you typically see just because we have that portal access. So we have patients messaging us even several times a week, getting access to our providers and care team. Most people do not message that often. It's usually once a week or so. And we're pretty quick to respond. Right now, our average response rate is within 7 hours, for example. So it's just far more involved, far more immersive, way more touch points. The check ins are far more detailed. What you would typically expect with standard care for this today, which isn't through standard medicine, to be clear, it's usually a specialized provider in a functional health clinic, or you can find an alternative is that you would pay 500 to 1,000, sometimes even a $10,000 upfront retainer, just to meet with this provider, and that fees on an hourly basis. Maybe you meet with them once every 3 months, and then that 3 months check-in is maybe a 20-minute visit. So they're just not able to get the total picture that we're able to get between all these very detailed surveys and frequent touch points that are really getting the play-by-play as you're going through the patient journey.
It's really cool. Is there like a schedule for like check-in testing to see how things are progressing? Like what does that look like?
Yeah, we have scheduled check-in surveys. We also encourage lab testing based on certain logic that we see. We're not looking to push anything not necessary for the patient. So a lot of the lab testing we've left optional unless it is required, and the provider will voice out when it is. And we have clear guidelines within the company for when that is required. So we've tried to get this to what's necessary for the patient, because what we've noticed is that there's a lot of spaghetti, I guess, getting thrown against the wall. Like, let's just trial a lot of different supplements all at once. Let's try a bunch of IV drips. Let's try a bunch of these in clinic services, ranging from hyperbaric oxygen tanks to saunas, et cetera. And this is how a lot of these patients end up having these multi tens of thousands of dollars for their bill. Some of these patients, hundreds of thousands of dollars, all self pay. And now they also have to foot the bill for their environmental services, the remediation, which is necessary. You have to get out of the environment, right? Especially
Yeah.
if you own the home, then you're going to have to fund the remediation. So the health expense after something like that either doesn't happen and they live with ongoing chronic illness that further deteriorates, or they try to DIY it, which also doesn't work, or they end up just sinking a lot of money into services that are costing tens of thousands of dollars self pay and putting the family in strife. So a lot of the solutions right now just aren't workable.
Yeah, I mean, you highlight a lot of the issues that we hear all the time. I'm really glad that you touched on because it's important. Like if people are spending on their health, but they're continuously in the place that's making them sick, it's not going to work. And I think it's just like so important for people to understand that. At the same time, this is just my opinion. You can tell me if you agree or not. But like, it doesn't mean that you can't do anything like while you're there. But it's like try to figure out like how do I get some relief in the body while I'm figuring out what I'm doing in the house. Like there's has to do it. But at the end of the day, I know what I've seen, what we've seen is that when people are working on their body and they're doing whatever protocol they're doing, they might see some improvement and then they might like level off, and sometimes they can come back down if they're still in the place that's kind of feeding the problem in the first place. Are you guys are you able to track like success tracks like time to and other potential key variables that you find that are really important to be kind of hitting certain road marks, or if the environment is there is an issue, not an issue, this is what it looks like once that gets clean, we see this, like how deep into the information in the data are you able to understand like really what's working and where the key levers are to be pulled?
Yeah, you touched on so many great points. So we do have a solid educational foundation within the company. It's in the resources section in the patient portal. There is a pretty steep educational ramp up. We're now putting our heads together within the company. How do we simplify this? How do we create more audiovisual content? How do we gamify it? How do we deliver the right nuggets at the right time for patients? So we're exploring that further. To your point, though, just I'll try to remember what you just said from top to bottom. We do start treatment in the environment. We do endorse that. We do support that. For the far majority of patients, there are certain patient types that we just won't take on, especially if they're in the environment. But for the far majority, we do start treatment. We do think it's beneficial. There is a dynamic where some patients do plateau.
Mhm.
The approach has to change at that time point, and the whole sequence of ways to troubleshoot that based on all the factors that we look at in the intake survey. Part of the educational process is also adjusting lifestyle and diet. So lifestyle, like travel with binders, for example, minimize exposure, research hotels that have a low likelihood of you getting re-exposed. Uh, Equip your home with isolation techniques, try to identify the source, try to purify the air as much as possible, do a dust test if you move into a new place, take certain supplements that can reduce the symptoms that you're feeling. A low amylose diet is common. So there's just a lot of educational points that are important as they're going through the process. But this is very nuanced. A lot of these rules of thumb do not apply to the masses, and it really has to be looked at the individual level. And that's where this level of detail orientation and nuance that we bring in the surveys, our guidelines, our responses from the logic come into play for each and every one of our patients.
Okay, so success stories.
Yeah.
So you've been doing this a while, or a short while here now, as you guys have been ramping up really quickly. Um, how's it working? What are some of the good stories, the hope and motivation that there is for people?
Yeah, we're starting to get some really strong symptom resolutions data already. So Dr. Scott McMahon, Dr. Richard Shoemaker set the bar. They estimated 90% of their patients have 70 to 90% symptoms resolution, and we're coming really close to that already. So far, we're seeing around 75% symptoms resolution at around the 8 to 12 week mark for our patients. Some
Wow.
patients have endorsed 100% symptoms resolution, and this is a blend of patients in and out of the environment too. They are all compliant with care and are all motivated to go through the protocol. So you wouldn't expect to see that level of success if you're not going through the program and really sticking with it. But we're already seeing that 75% number at roughly the 8 to 12 week mark.
I mean, that's incredible for anyone listening to this. You're talking what, 4 months, 3 to 4 months,
Yeah.
5% if you stay on the path. Like everyone who feels like this is a multi-year thing, and obviously for some people it might be. You can't say that it's not for everybody, but like to be able to know that there's a path to get a significant reduction in symptoms, in my opinion, if I'm not using the right word, that you're able to use, that's fine. But like that's significant. 75% is significant. And to be able to see success like that, and you're 100% right, by the way, on the compliance thing. And let me just throw this out there, like for the health side and for the home side, like if you are working with someone and you're putting them in a position to where you are asking for their guidance, right? Like this is the situation that you're in. And then they give you guidance in order to achieve your goal. Like you have to listen to what they're saying, right? So these types of situations where it's like, oh, I'm going to bring somebody in and they're going to tell me what I need to do. And it's like, I don't really want to do that, but I'm still going to do these other things. And to think that you're going to get to where they're telling you you're going to get to, you're not going to get there, right? There's a reason that there are processes and protocols in place. We have our version of that. You guys have your version of that, right? And it's because it's been happening forever and we have an understanding of how it works, right? And so it's the good news is that number that we talked about, that's possible, but like everyone who's going through this, I said this the other day. I don't know if it was on my pod or somebody else's pod or wherever I was talking. I was almost like imagining like if, like, let's say I'm the person that's having, I'm the health compromised person, right? So I'm kind of like, Brian Incorporated, and my mission statement is to get healthy. That's my vision is to be healthy in 5 years and not care about anything. And that's what my company is, and that's who I am, right? And that's our whole purpose. When you're at a, and this, you got venture back, you're a bigger, you're set up like this. You have a board, you have advisors, you have people that surround yourself. And the reason you choose to bring those people into those situations, right? Like a board of directors is only there because somebody offered them the seat to be there, right? So if you choose to put somebody on your personal health company's board of directors, you should probably listen to the person that you put on your board of directors, right? And once you put them on the board, you say, okay, your expertise is whatever, bam, you're my go-to for this. Your expertise is whatever, you're my go-to for this. And as soon as you you start questioning it, you got to look at yourself and you got to ask yourself two questions. Is it because this person has proven to me that they don't know what they're talking about? And if that's the case, then they're fired from the board. Like that's it. If the other reason is just that I don't like what they're saying, that's not a reason, right? And so when you get to that point where someone's giving you advice or feedback or direction or consulting or whatever it is, and you start like, I don't want to do that. You got to ask yourself, is it because they've proven to me that they don't know what they're talking about? Or is it just because I don't really want to do it? And if it's the second one, you got to question why you even have one on board in the first place, because that's why you brought them. So important.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I also want to add a few layers onto those numbers as well. It really just depends on a handful of factors. One, your unique biology, certain genetic susceptibilities have worse health outcomes. They take longer to recover. If you're blessed with better genetics, you're going to heal faster, especially once you're out of the environment, especially. Two, it really just depends on what you were exposed to, how acute that was, how long that was, even down to the types of species, which, that data is still emerging. And then three, adherence, compliance, like, are you actually doing it? For the lifestyle factors. And then five, if there's any other underlying health issues that you have, if you have Lyme or tick-borne illness, or if you're hypersensitive and you have histamine overexpression, or if you have a formal diagnosis for MCAS. Those are a lot trickier patient cases. So it really just depends on these handful of different things to consider for how quickly your recovery is and your symptoms resolution.
Yeah, I didn't want to promise that everyone's getting 75% in 4 months.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
but
yeah,
more so because you're totally right. There's all those variables that go into an individual person. But the point that there is success in a path that's being shown over a period of time is a good thing, right? And I think that that's very promising in a format that is more accessible. And so the amount of money people are spending on this stuff right now, going 300, 400, 500 a month really isn't anywhere near what they're currently paying. You start adding in all the supplements they have to do and all the IV drips that they're doing and all the other things that they're doing, over the course of a month or a period of time. It's a big investment that people are making across the board. And so being able to find ways to cut that down and still get results is, I think the path that most businesses work toward, right? It's not that Tesla's the same thing at all because it's not health related, but you start with a really expensive car to prove that it works. And then you figure out how to make it cheaper and more affordable so everyone can enjoy the car, right? And it's the same idea, right? You got to kind of figure out how it works. And that's like part of this timeline cycle we were talking about at the beginning. A lot of times these things, the early stages, is because there is no infrastructure or foundation for it to happen with cost efficiencies or anything. And so it takes time and it's a slow burn for things to start working. But on the roll front now, I mean, Dr. Shoemaker was late 90s, early 2000s when the first information came out. I mean, we're pushing 25 to 30 years here knowing about it, right? And the first few years of that time cycle is always whatever the new thing is. Like, that person's crazy. This doesn't make any sense. That's what eventually, like, people start realizing, no, wait, this guy isn't so crazy. Like, this stuff actually makes sense. It becomes like this very slow evolution of time before like different layers pick it up, and it's like a snowball going down a hill. It just takes a very long time sometimes. And so, what you guys are doing is, we're at this point now where the snowball's been rolling for like 20 years now. And now it's like starting to pick up some steam. And I think you guys are adding a lot to it, which is really cool.
Yeah, thank you so much. And to the Tesla example, which I love, we essentially, in a way, outsourced the expensive car aspect of what we did to this earlier research done, to the earlier pioneers in the field, to the early set of providers in this community. And now we're able to immediately execute on that lower cost, more affordable solution for patients with our debut to the world. And absolutely, I can't think of so many ideas that were readily accepted immediately with open arms by general population. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always groupthink that you have to shift like the mass of the group to lean the other direction before all of a sudden it's like accepted, right? Now, God forbid, you walk around within 100 feet of somebody with a cigarette, they might put you down. But like back in the day, it was like your kids are coming out, have a cigarette, kid. Here we go, celebrate. It's just like
yeah, it's separate from truth. It's separate from rational thinking. It's separate from data. It's emotional and it's tribal. So
yeah.
very interesting.
Well, is there anything that you feel like that we didn't cover that somebody's hearing right now?
Wow. I would say it always starts with your environment first. So if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably already have found mold in your home, or you're just wondering if you have mold in your home. And I think just stay curious and continue to look and know that the issue could be bigger than mold. There's now emerging research to support the actinobacteria in the environment, and even cyanobacteria or some of these other species, which can start as an external source and then come into the home. So I think stay curious, and I would say find a certified provider that really knows what they're doing and knows the hidden spaces to look, because it's not so obvious in a lot of these homes. It could be under the flooring, it could be in the crawl space, in the HVAC system, etc. So staying curious if you think it's a mold issue in your home, and if you're having symptoms, then it's worth getting the lab test as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So if somebody wanted to look into how it is to work with you guys and go through this process, where do they go?
Yeah, MoldCo.com is our website. And we also have a support email too. That's support@MoldCo.com. I personally read almost every single one of those emails. If sometimes I jump in with a response. And also we have a chat bot too, if you just want to chat with us live in real time.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing what you're doing. It's really exciting. It's cool.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see how you guys grow and progress. And if we're able to support you in any way, we'd be happy to do it. It's all in service of the same mission, just on different sides of the coin. So thanks for everything you're doing. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Ryan. This was so fun. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.